This episode is sponsored by Wondrium. Stick around till the end of the video to learn more about it. Hello, brains! Today I'm interviewing Dr. Patrick LaCount, who has been working on How to ADHD since 2017, helping out. He understood ADHD really well because he's a researcher and clinical psychologist, and ADHD was his area of expertise. So he had a lot of things to share to help me disseminate accurate information about ADHD. But recently I found out that there's another reason why he understood ADHD so well, and it's something he wasn't comfortable telling me at the time.
I have ADHD.
So you got a PhD in psychology and you
Right.
specialized in ADHD, and you didn't feel like you could talk about the fact that you had ADHD, even with
Right.
me, even helping out with a channel that spoke openly about ADHD. You didn't feel like you could talk about it.
Yeah.
Why?
So many reasons. I think in large part, there was a lot of internal shame about it. I didn't feel good about it. I didn't really embrace it. There's also some other things that fed into that. Academia, it's somewhat of a faux pas to study something that you have. Like, does that remove objectivity? Like, what are you doing this for? Are you trying to just answer your own problems? Things like that. So felt a little bit of shame there and just hit it. I felt like something you couldn't really talk about. Also in academia, it's your value is your productivity, and ADHD is somewhat of a disorder of poor productivity at times, or at least inconsistent.
So part of it was academia, and part of it was because you were studying ADHD, it was something that you couldn't really talk about.
Right. Yeah, and even just in my own head, the narrative of, I would tell myself this of, you're getting a PhD, you're doing these things. Do you really have ADHD? Are you really struggling? Or, well, there are people who struggle so much worse with it.
So did you doubt the diagnosis?
Definitely at times I did. And I would go back to the report. Actually, I still have it. And like reading over it and, well, okay, maybe it was just this, maybe it was just that. So definitely just second guessing stuff. And same thing too, whether, and a lot of people deal with this, do I need meds or not? Do I need, is this really my accomplishment, or is it, because, medications help me, things like that.
Yeah. So when were you diagnosed with ADHD?
So that was towards the end of first year of college. We were learning about it in a class, and I never thought about it, particularly in adulthood. It was still fairly new at that time to even consider ADHD as a diagnosis in adulthood, and was learning a little bit about that. And professor kind of just mildly suggested hey, might just want to get checked out. And I remember too, in elementary school, I got pulled out for reading. I had a bunch of, homework issues. Yeah, just felt like I had put in so much time, effort, and energy into trying to keep up with people. And then at college, I couldn't do it anymore. It was overwhelming. So
when you found out you got this diagnosis, who did you tell?
Nobody.
Nobody at all?
Nobody. Yeah.
So you had to process this information about yourself all on your own.
Yeah. And at the time, I really didn't think anything of it. It was just, okay, you got this thing, and oh, now you can be as studious as you want. You can, be as organized as you want. It just opened doors for me, for what I could finally now do. I didn't really think about it as, oh, this is something to share with people. Especially at that time, I think we've gotten better as a society, just talking about mental health, but it wasn't really something you talked about.
So you were in grad school learning about ADHD, which meant you had co-students. What do you call it? Classmates.
Yeah.
It's been a while. So you had classmates that were also studying ADHD. Did anybody ever guess that you had ADHD?
Not to my face, at least. Maybe. I compensated a lot. I know it's weird to say this because it feels almost like humble bragging, but I worked tirelessly. I was in the lab all weekend, most weekends, just prepare for the next week, try to get on top of emails, prep stuff for clients I was seeing in the clinic, because I didn't want people to see that, because I saw that as a sign of weakness. And grad school is competitive, and especially on that metric of productivity. And so, I don't know, I was very this is business, professional, and I tried to just mask it as much as possible. So the person I was, when I was at school in my office, felt categorically different. I had friends comment on that than when I was hanging out with my friends after a CrossFit workout, or, having a beer, it was different.
I was surprised when you told me, because there there were times where I would even comment on things. Like we would be meeting, you know, we would meet every week, okay, for years to talk about the latest research and what's going on and like what I want to do on the channel. And sometimes he would share about his personal life, and he'd talk about something, you know, just like a series of events of things just going terribly wrong. And I'm like, wow, you're like really having the ADHD experience. Like it's really good that you're experiencing this, because this is like everyday life for a lot of people with ADHD, and now you're going to understand it better. Did you ever consider telling me?
Oh, all the time, yeah. But just the fear.
What were you afraid of? Okay, like I have I have a YouTube channel talking openly about my ADHD, and what were you afraid would happen even if you told somebody who wouldn't judge?
I think just, again, in my head, what are you complaining about? What are you, like, I don't know, very like typical. You're in grad school, you're making it work. She's not going to resonate with that. You know, people are going through other struggles with ADHD. Like, this is, you have ADHD? Okay. Like, just.
It felt like you weren't ADHD enough.
Yeah. I guess that's.
To like claim that identity?
Yeah.
Was the fear then that I would be like, no, you don't? Like, or like, I have ADHD. Like, I dropped out of community college and like, I struggled and stuff. Like, it's not the same. Like,
I think so. Yeah. There's that. There's the, are you just making an excuse? It's still so hard to answer, particularly with you. Just even what that would mean for me. I think like speaking that out to, like, there were a couple like partners I had. A couple partners. That's it that I ever told I had ADHD. Speaking it, like, just scared me. It's in my head. That's safe. That's I can take care of that there. But if I put it out into the world, it's like, oh, that's real, and might have to confront some things of, like, what does it mean for you to have ADHD? And I think maybe that was the other part of it, is just getting questions and feeling like I haven't even taken the time to think about these things. What does that mean? Like, what has your journey been? And like, I was just like, nope, don't touch it. For some reason, that felt so aversive to think about it, to meditate on that.
So it wasn't even just about other people knowing. It was like, if you say it out loud, then you'll know.
Yeah.
So it was that it wasn't really a part of your own identity.
No. I mean, I had one girlfriend, in fact, like, just planning over the weekend, like, food or groceries was overwhelming me once. And I remember she, like, pointed out, like, you know, you have ADHD, like, maybe that's, and like, it felt piercing. She didn't say anything mean about it. It was just like, you do have ADHD, you know, like a reminder. And like, for some reason I was like, no, like, don't, like, that's an excuse. Like, it's just like, nope, like, that shouldn't be my identity. I just didn't want ADHD to be associated with me for some reason.
So do you think that how you felt about ADHD and like not really wanting to be too closely associated with it had anything to do with what you were learning about what it meant to have ADHD in school? Yeah,
because the statistics, they're not great for those with ADHD. And for a lot of reasons, like just my upbringing in childhood, it was, you know, don't let anything else define what you can do. Like my mom, that was something she just ingrained in us, is just, no matter your circumstances, no matter what adversities, do the thing. And even to the point where it's like you're running yourself into the ground. Like I had that kind of, tell me I can't do something. Tell me, like, I'm going to crush it. I might be barely breathing at the end, but like, you know, I will make it happen. Like, I will show you.
So did that even apply to like the limitations? Like, okay, tell me I have these limitations. Like, no, I won't.
Yeah, and I will prove you wrong. There's only so much you can do until it inevitably comes out. And when it did, that was so hurtful for me, because I knew I didn't have an explanation that I felt comfortable sharing. I felt like it really hit hard of, show me, tell me I can't do that. It's like, well, they just did and you failed. That was hard to deal with.
It sounds like on some level you were trying to not have ADHD.
Yeah, it felt like you can't in academia. I think that was where a lot of this felt, there wasn't room for that. I think every job, right, has an expectation of productivity. But in academia in particular, you know, it's these bright individuals who accomplish so much and they're outliers in a lot of instances, and you're trying to blend in. When you're applying for grants to work in a lab, your value is your level of productivity. How much money can you bring in? How many pubs can you get? And so, I didn't want that out there. That was a threat.
What do you think it would have meant for you to actually have ADHD in that environment? On
one hand, it just fed shame. Shame got bigger and bigger and bigger, and so it became scarier and scarier and scarier to talk to people about it. But it also just, it impeded my own self-actualization. I don't know, just knowledge about myself, instead of just being like, okay, like, hey, this might be a part of ADHD. How can we work around that? It was like, nope, figure it out. It's because of this. It's because of that. Like, work harder, trying to be this person that I'm not.
Yeah, and this is a really common story too, of like, you were trying to outrun the ADHD and outwork the ADHD and like overcome all of the challenges like by sheer effort alone. Well, like, okay, well, I'm struggling with this and I'm not getting these things done, so I'll just work on the weekends. And this is, by the way, how burnout happens. You know, at some point, like, you can't keep putting in all of that effort because then you don't have enough time to recharge.
Yeah.
It sounds like, among other things, like what it cost you is a lot of time for other things that were important to you.
Yeah. And that was the other part too, is like, I knew other grad students, like, grad school's hard. You lose touch with friends. You may not be the best partner, not being as good of a brother, son, daughter, like whatever it might be for you. Everyone has that story to varying degrees. And so I kind of just clustered myself into that of like, well, everyone's dealing with that.
What do you think would have happened if you had disclosed your ADHD?
I
Or
mean,
what were you afraid would have happened?
Yeah, I mean, so not only did I kind of hear it as a faux pas to study what you have or to disclose that you have that stuff, despite being in mental health. So, like, I had an advisor at one point. I remember I was sitting in and we were talking about an applicant who could work with us. And the person self-disclosed they had ADHD. And I remember sitting in the meeting, there were some other applicants that we were talking about, and really liked the guy, ended up being accepted and worked with us. But she, highlighted, he self-disclosed in his personal statement that he has ADHD, and that worries me. And that just bookmarked it in my head, like, don't ever tell anyone, because again, it's so competitive. The margins are so small. Sure, you same level of productivity, maybe it took you a year longer to get the same productivity, but all things being equal, but he has ADHD, so maybe we should skip on him. So I was worried it would jeopardize what positions you would get, what labs you could be in. Like, it would just be assumed you're not going to be productive. You're not going to be able to do these things. I don't want to have to deal with this.
All of this is like a lot of, I don't want to tell people because, like, I didn't think to, I didn't want to associate with it. It would maybe hurt my career. So given all of that, like, what made you decide to tell anybody?
I think just I had to. I couldn't outrun it. I just felt like I hit a breaking point where achievements weren't doing it anymore, and work harder. And it's just a point of, I can't, and I'm working, like, my efficiency, productivity, like, just burnout galore. It coincided with, like, the beginning of COVID, and I think a lot of people had it was a time to, like, meditate and reflect, and yeah, just this question of, what are you doing this all for? Again, like, the way I grew up, my mom is a huge reason that I think my siblings and I, despite, growing up, like, on welfare and food stamps, and, like, despite that, I've got, a brother who's a physicist, a sister who's a doctor and on residency, one who's a professional dancer in LA, so accomplished. But, like, something in our family, like, because again, we were told, you can do anything. Don't listen to what anyone has to say, do it, like, make it happen. But a lot of us struggle with, we'll do it at all costs, even our mental health. And that's kind of where I was at, where my mental health was not having it anymore.
Who was the first person you told when you were like, you know what, I'm going to start sharing this? Who was the first person you told?
My dad.
How'd it go?
It was great. Yeah. Incredibly validating, questioning. He was curious more than anything.
Did that make you feel more comfortable telling more people?
Definitely. I think more than anything, it just, like, I felt lighter. Like, it was this thing that I didn't really appreciate, like, how much that might have been weighing me down, how much I was, like, working to hide it, how much just I was ashamed of it. It took a brick out of the bag.
Is it still hard to talk about?
For sure. I mean, I'm still figuring it out. What stage do you tell someone? I think I've got that figured out, actually. But yeah, like, just the more, like, stuff you might explore in therapy of just, yeah, what does that mean for you? What's the impact on you now? Going ahead with your business, your career, in dating, your partner, with your friends, if you have a child, stuff I never really allowed myself to even think about.
How much have you incorporated it into your identity now? Like, before you were like, it's not me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like introduce myself like, hey, I'm Patrick, I have ADHD. It's not, that doesn't define me. And I feel like I'm appreciating more the the gray area.
So it's not like all or nothing. Either like, I'm ADHD world,
Right.
or I don't talk about it at all.
Right. Yeah. It's not one or the other. And now I get to think a little bit more about those deeper questions of, what does that mean for you at work, running your own business, as a psychologist in practice, if you have a kid in the future, just deeper stuff that I really wouldn't even allow myself to entertain, to think about, because even recognizing that in myself, I was still grappling with that. So,
well, I just want to acknowledge that this is super brave and just where you're at your journey. You didn't tell anybody when you were first diagnosed. Now you're literally putting it on the internet for anyone to find out. Is that scary?
Yeah. I mean, it's because there's still that threat, but I also just have so much experience of so what?
If you felt like you were allowed to talk about your ADHD in academia, do you think you would have stayed?
No, I don't think so. Because ultimately what it came to was I proved to myself plenty, not to sound arrogant or anything, but I was no, I was good. I published, I got grants, I did a postdoc, I was good, but it was just at what cost? So I think, even if I talked about it openly, it's just, I don't see academia being a terribly great place for at least my ADHD brain.
Do you think that it has to be that way, or do you think that academia can change and be more ADHD friendly?
I think it could be more ADHD friendly, certainly, especially I would say within the realm of mental health. I've had grad students in my program who were studying depression and got depressed, and just hearing them kind of feel like they couldn't be, despite professors studying this stuff, and they do have genuine deep empathy and care for the populations that which they study, but for some reason, just I think the pressure to produce in academia is so high that it has the unfortunate consequences of having people do stuff that they're not proud of, and that might be pushing your grad student to work through their depression. And I don't think it's necessarily them. I think it's just kind of the system. That's just, there are no excuses. We have to get this done.
Well, thank you so much. I do have a question. Knowing what you know now, would you have done anything differently?
I mean, yeah. For me personally, I wish certainly that I would embrace it a little bit more. I could have been more in touch with who I am, what I value, what makes me happy, rather than just masking it for so long and not really losing touch of who I am.
Do you have any suggestions or advice for somebody who might be in a similar situation of not really feeling comfortable talking about their ADHD with people, or not knowing how to talk about it or how much to share?
I mean, it's going to be different for everyone. Because there are some people that I feel like, if I would have told them, it could have stopped me from having great opportunities in grad school. But I guess to just consider, in addition to, what's the threat? There's so much, I feel like, power or just attention to what's the threat, what's the cost, what could be at jeopardy, but also give that same effort of what if it goes well? What would that do? And maybe if you're not even sure, because I didn't know, even if you're not sure of exactly how you'll feel, that it will, lighten you up a bit, maybe give it a try. Just what's the harm in telling one person? See what happens. It's just one more data point to just be oh, maybe that's not how people act.
Well, thank you so much for coming and talking about this. I know this was a really big step for you. It's just been a couple months since you told me personally, so very brave.
Yeah.
Those of us with ADHD often love to learn, and Wondrium is a way to do that without having to remember to register for classes or make it to them on time. If you haven't heard of Wondrium, Wondrium is the rebrand of the Great Courses Plus, and it's designed for curious brains. I love it because they have a ton of courses available for streaming, and anything I want to watch is included in my subscription. How-tos, tutorials, documentaries. Wondrium is where you can find the answer to pretty much anything you've ever wondered about. The one I'm taking now is one of their new ones, American Sign Language for Everyone. My cousin is deaf, and while I know a few signs already, I wanted to learn more now that I live closer, and I've heard from people in the neurodivergent community that using hand gestures is also a great way for us to communicate when we're too overwhelmed to speak. The professor points out that we already use a lot of gestures to communicate. Chloe does too. Would you like some food? But learning ASL allows us to communicate concepts, stories, and share even more important information so we can better interact with the deaf community. The course is really cool. The professor is excellent, and I've already learned a lot. What blew my mind is that a lot of the facial expressions my cousin makes are actual visual signs in ASL. I thought she was just really expressive. I'm excited to be able to communicate with her better the next time we hang out. If you'd like to check it out, Wondrium is offering a free trial right now. And again, they're regular supporters of this show, so by supporting them, you're also supporting us. If you'd like to try it out, go to wondrium.com/howtoadhd or click on the link in the description below to start your free trial today. That's it for this interview. Thank you so much to my brain advocates and all my Patreon brains for making things like this possible. We were able to fly Patrick out for this interview and have him give it in person. I thought it was a really important thing to talk about because I know a lot of people are in that situation where they're feeling like they can't really disclose, they can't really share, they're scared to talk about it at work, and they're maybe in a high pressure environment where it could cost them professional opportunities to disclose their ADHD. So I thought it was really important to hear from somebody who's been there and hear that journey as well. If you like this episode and you want to support us on Patreon, you can do that. We'll put that in the description below. And if you want to check out Patrick's practice, did you want to go ahead and share really quickly about that?
Yeah, so Practical Psychological Services. I've got a license now to practice in 30 plus states for therapy, for diagnostic assessments, and then later this year, well, actually probably the time when this video comes out, having some groups, some virtual groups available for mindfulness-based interventions and cognitive behavioral therapy for young adults and adults with ADHD.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, click all the things, and I will see you next video. You wanna do bye brains with me?
Yeah.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Bye brains.